all of us would just climb on top of the toilets and everything just to see the guys so that we know that, oh, these creatures, they exist.
Wow.
Welcome to the Desi Outsiders podcast. I'm Ankita.
I'm Meenal.
And in today's episode, we talk about something slightly controversial in the Indian context. It's not something that hasn't been talked about already, but it's something that we haven't talked about or addressed yet. And like the previous topic that we handled, this one is going to be divided into a lot of parts. I still don't know how many parts, but we at least have a part 2 coming up after this, people. So, welcome to part 1 of the engineering medicine dilemma of the Indian millennials. So, Meenal, I think I want to start off with you because, first of all, our listeners should know that Meenal was raised in Europe and she ended up picking up medicine for her degree and she's going to become a doctor in a year. And I was
2 years, actually, Ankita.
In 2 years.
Yeah.
And I was raised in India, and all of my classmates and my friends were picking up engineering and medicine and law, some of them. But I ended up picking English literature, and I got so much shit for that. Mm-hmm. Oh God, you have no idea how much shit I got for that. So basically, it's a little bit of a contrast, the two of us, because I should have been the one doing medicine, and you should have been the one doing literature and writing a blog or something, Meenal.
Yeah, but if I did that, I think I'd be kicked out of the house. And
yeah, which is why I'm curious. So I thought maybe we could start off this episode by asking you why.
That was a very light-hearted joke, Ankita. Of course, I wouldn't get kicked out of the house. I'd get kicked out of the family. But I think why I chose medicine, I get that question so many times. Even when I was studying, everyone kept asking me, why you do medicine? And, people always have that same answer. I don't know what people in India would say because I haven't been exposed to that environment. But here, because we're lucky, we have a lot of privileges. A lot of people say, oh, I want to help other people. I want to give something back to society and all that crap that they've probably looked up on the internet or on Tumblr or whatever. But that wasn't the case for me, Ankita, because honestly, if I really look back, I don't know. When I was born and since I was a young girl, my parents kept saying, oh, you're going to be a doctor one day, you're going to be a doctor. And somehow I believed that that's what I was going to be. So I don't know if my parents I don't know if I chose something else and perhaps it would have been okay with my family. I still don't know. But I think it just felt like it was the best thing. And it felt like it was probably the best future I could possibly have.
So did you ever try telling them, did you ever try asking them, what if I became, say, a fashion designer? Or what if I became a hairstylist?
Well, Ankita, fashion design and hairstylist was totally out of the question. I was raised with an elder brother. And I was raised playing football, playing basketball. And my mom actually bought me a Barbie doll when I was about 5, I think.
Right.
Because she was quite concerned that, Meenal's actually not being a girly girl. And it turned out that I actually just snapped the head off the Barbie doll and used it as a tennis ball.
Oh, wow.
So I really wasn't into any of that. So then my mom's second attempt was she bought like shampoo and all these makeup things for my Barbie doll. And somehow I turned my Barbie doll's hair pink. I don't know how I did that, but I thought that was pretty funny. So obviously I wasn't into any of that kind of stuff. But Ankita, when I was doing my A-levels is what we do in the UK. I'm sure some people in India do that as well if you go to private school or boarding school.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so basically these are the last exams you do in high school before you go off to university. I was actually very good at mathematics. I loved mathematics because it was so, it's either right or wrong, nothing complicated. And I was really enjoying that subject.
How are we even friends?
Opposites attract, Ankita, it's probably what it is.
That's the definition of my marriage, basically. Yeah. So please continue.
Yeah, so when I applied to medicine, I actually got rejected from all the medical schools in the UK, and it was very disappointing. For me, not so much. I didn't, because I kind of expected it to some extent. I knew I was anticipating that could happen. My parents, on the other hand, because every parent wants a perfect child, they would say, okay, she'll get in the first go. It's not going to be an issue. So I actually considered that, going into physics, going down that road. But I think that was mainly because I just wanted to get into university. I thought there's no point, trying for medicine. I'll go for something else. But Ankita, then that would just mean I was going for the easier option. So there was a lot of contemplating, a lot of not arguments, but a lot of long discussions in my family. And I don't think it was me who was mainly upset that I didn't get into medical school in the first attempt. It was more my parents. And that was very stressful on me because I still had to give my school exams. I still had to get good grades. And I saw my mom like really upset every day, thinking like, oh, she hasn't got into school. Why hasn't she got into medical school? And there were days I felt like giving up, and I thought, you know what? Screw this. I was going to do biomedical sciences or any bullshit which is slightly related to medicine, and I'll just go into that. But I was very lucky, Ankita, because I had a very good mentor, and my mentor was my table tennis coach, who I've known for over 12 years now. And Lizanne, if you're listening in, I love you and thank you for everything you've done for me. But she actually helped me, Ankita, because she kept telling me that, Meenal, you don't give up. There's anything you want, you keep fighting for it. And I kept fighting and I kept studying really hard. And although I didn't get in, Ankita, one day I saw an advert on the TV, and it was an advert from a charity in the UK. And they said, oh, so we are an organization and we want to actually teach young children the importance of volunteering, the importance of having an impact in your society, in your community. And I just thought, wow, this is amazing. Like, why would you not want to do that? So when I told my mom, she was like, no, that's not happening because we're not sending you abroad for so long. Like, and
For how long?
So it
And
was,
what?
yeah. So this program, they said you can go to pretty much any developing country in the world. So you
Oh,
could go to some
wow.
parts of Africa, some parts of India. And I probably mentioned this in the first episode. As someone who wasn't even allowed out of the house for longer than half an hour, I had to come back home at a certain time. Imagine leaving the house for so long to a completely new place. So after a lot of convincing and a lot of strategic convincing, I would have to say,
Yeah,
my
we're all really good at that, aren't we? The
yeah.
strategic convincing bit.
And actually, like with my, because I can say I'm a daddy's girl. So I managed to convince my father, and so I actually went for an interview for this to this organization. So at this moment, Ankita, I decided I'm taking a gap year. That was done and decided. So I have a year now to do whatever I want. Obviously, a lot of people I know from university here, a lot of people just did work experience in their local hospital. So spend a year doing nursing jobs or cleaning shit, whatever they had to do. I didn't do that because I didn't want to. I just thought staying in, because I'm from Gibraltar. So Gibraltar, if you Google Gibraltar, it's a tiny place. There's not a lot of room for expanding your experiences. And I thought I want to go somewhere and, really just see everything nice and raw. So I went for an interview for this, Ankita. My dad came with me to London, and he was very supportive. I did this interview. I met a lot of amazing people, and I got a place, which was really a really happy moment for me because I thought, wow, like I actually have something great happening in my future. So my parents said, we'll let you go as long as it's in India or Nepal, so something close. If something happens to you, there's family around. So Ankita, the day that I got the country I was going to, so I opened my email and I read, oh, congratulations, Meenal, you got chosen. So anybody who's listening right now, the organization is called VSO. And so I get an email from VSO and they said, oh, congratulations, you're going to Mozambique. So I stared at my computer, I was like, where the hell is this country? So in my head, before I even went on Google, I told my mom, yeah, I'm going to Mozambique. She's like, where is it? I'm like, yeah, it's like really close to India. And
it's in Africa, isn't it?
Yes, in Africa. So for a while, like for a couple of days, I kept telling my mom that, and she was still like trying to absorb all the information that I was telling her. And then then I had to Google Mozambique. I had to know where it was. And I spent days just trying to figure out where the hell I'm going. And I figured I was in Africa in a very rural area as well. So they gave me the name of the village and everything that I was going to. And obviously, because it's such a rural village, there's not a lot of information on the internet. So I finally told my parents that actually, like, I'm not going to India, I'm going to Africa. And that was a big issue, Ankita, because so the thing was, Ankita, they knew I was going to Africa, which is fine, but they had no idea that I was living in a village with no electricity, no running water, a tin roof over my head. I'd have to probably go to a well to collect my water and all these things, Ankita. So every day I just like throw a truth bomb. Like, so I had to do it very slowly and very carefully. So my mom called the VSO organization. She called everybody to see like what exactly is happening. She got everybody's phone numbers, which is, I guess, is kind of normal. And I think if I was a parent, I probably would go to that extreme as well. If I was sending my young
Yeah,
daughter
because you
abroad,
were only like 17, weren't you?
I was 18, Ankita.
18, okay.
I was 18, and so that's what I did, Ankita. I went to Mozambique, and yes, it was a very tough experience at the beginning, knowing that I couldn't just open a tap and pour in a glass of water. I mean, there was a lot of difficulties that I went through over there. I lived in a host family, so
Right.
they didn't even, because so Mozambique has the official language, which is Portuguese, but my
Right.
family were very traditional. They spoke the village language, which wasn't
Okay.
even close to Portuguese, and I had to
Your
learn
family, you mean your host
my
family?
host family, yeah, my
Right.
host
Yeah.
family, and I couldn't even speak their village language, and I learned that, and it was
Mhm.
because I was put on the spot, Ankita. And I'm telling you, you go to university, you don't learn these things. You don't learn
Mm.
how to think on the spot. You don't learn how to adapt so quickly at such
Yep.
extreme conditions. I mean, I came to Prague, and yes, I
Mm.
had to adapt. I had to figure out the
Mm.
language. But it was nothing compared to what I had to learn in Mozambique.
Tell me something crazy that happened in Mozambique.
Well, there are a lot of crazy things that happened, Ankita.
Mm.
I met wonderful, wonderful people who I still stay in touch with, and I still go to meet them because they played such a big part of my experience. That we connect at a certain level, and I think one of the turning points was that my first night I went there, I saw a young boy, and he was an albino. It's the first
Mm.
albino I've ever seen, actually, in my life, really. And he was running around, but he was running around and he was saying these random words, and I didn't understand what he was doing. So he looked like he had a condition.
Right.
Nobody knew, and he kept like coming towards us, like the foreigners, and start pulling our clothes, because obviously he got a bit excited, like white people, like,
Mm.
who are these people?
Mm.
And nobody knew who he was. So I spoke to one of the villagers, down the
Mm.
line when I could communicate,
Mm.
and they told me that this kid was so his father was arrested and
Right.
his mother had run away. And people in the village, because he's an albino, people thought that he was a curse. And
Oh.
so Ankita, he had nobody around him. Nobody wanted to go near him. Nobody wanted to like touch him. Nothing. So
Oh.
that was a big shock to me. The first day I was
How
there,
how old was he?
the thing is, Ankita, I mean, when you're in places like these, the biological age and the physical age are two completely different things. Like, I
Right.
saw a 7-year-old girl, and she looked like a 3-year-old because her body frame was so small, because they don't
Yeah.
have the right diet and nutrition. So
Yeah.
if I think back, I think he must have been about 10 or 11.
Oh, poor thing.
Yeah, and that was my first like moving experience. Like, oh shit, like I've never seen anything like this before. And the thing is, Ankita, I've seen this happen in India, but my family
Mm.
are so protective; they will never let me go around these things. So I've never seen it raw. I've never seen the raw material like I saw
Yeah.
when I was there. And the first night I was there, because I went into my room in quotations. My mattress was just a foam, like piece of foam.
Right.
My tin I had a tin roof. My house it was a brick house, and with the
Right.
ants crawling, lizards crawling, everything you can imagine under the sun. And I started crying. I just thought, I can't do this. And the thing was, Angita, because I left with such little confidence from my parents, because I saw my parents were afraid that, oh, where's Meenal going? I had that in my head.
That you wouldn't
Yeah,
survive.
so I think if my parents had said, Mil, you can do this no matter what you face, you'll be able to get through it. If I had that good pep talk from someone or my parents, it would have been a bit easier.
Mm.
So that night I cried. I just told my friends, I can't do this. Oh,
Mm.
by the way, I went with a group of about 10 of us from the UK. And
Right.
each of us were in different households around the village. And my friends tried to like console me, but I said, I can't do this. Like, how am I going to live like this? But then, Ankita, I walked around the village and I saw kids playing. There was, like the skipping ropes. People were listening to radios on their Nokia phones, and
Oh.
they were having a great time. And I just thought, Mio, come on, man, this is their life. You have 3 months to pull it off. And I woke up the next day with a whole new mindset, and I was just ready for those 3 months. And yeah, there were a lot of times where I wanted to go home. Like, I'll be honest, it wasn't an easy 3 months, but there were times where I was just so grateful to be where I was. And Ankita, I think, because my family come from Delhi, and I know in New Delhi
Mm.
it's such a busy lifestyle, and Delhi has boomed so much in the past 10 years. in terms of becoming modernized and European, that you don't get much of a chance to just like take a step back. We don't have that chance. And in school, you don't learn about these things. So I had that chance to just sit down and actually self-reflect about my own morals, my own ideas about life. Even though I was only 18, you can't come to any major conclusions or life decisions at that age, but you get an idea of who you really are. And that was an amazing start for me, Ankita, because when I came to Prague, when I actually came here, I had that head start compared to everybody else. So I came here and I was just super excited. I was like that Duracell bunny, like, yeah, let's do this. Ready for medical school. And everybody else was, oh crap, I'm in Prague, I'm in Czech Republic. People have come here from big cities. So from London, from Scandinavia, they've come from rich places, and that they've ended up in Czech Republic, which has just come out of communism only 20 years ago. So you can imagine it's not very modernized, and people struggled because they thought, I can't live here. This is quite shit, really. But for me, it was like, wow, new challenge. Let's learn Czech. Let's speak to people. I got a lot of people told me to shut the fuck up and just, I was too excited for too many people. But that whole experience, Ankita, really set the boundaries for me, the base level of moving out of home and learning about new experiences. And although the decision to go to Mozambique wasn't accepted with open arms in my family, I still believed it was the right thing for me. And this is one thing I've learned, that whether it's choosing your career or anything in your life, if you really believe something is good for you and you believe it's worth fighting for, you should go for it. Because I did that before I went to Mozambique. And I think that journey that I went through is priceless. And I don't think I'd get that anywhere else.
Yeah, because in India, Meenal, I've heard about students taking break years after their 12th grade so that they can prepare for an entrance exam, like an engineering entrance exam or a medical entrance exam. And I've seen kids who've repeated these entrance exams for 2 years and they're still preparing and they're taking break years just because their parents tell them that we can't afford to send you to a college or private institution. You have to get a seat in a government institution, so you have to get a good rank in the entrance exam.
But Ankita, what good does this do to someone's mind when they just sat at home studying? And I know they don't just sit at home; they go to tuition or whatever. No,
there are these coaching institutions where you can go. They're residential, so you go stay there and all you do is study, and they don't give you your mobile phone. And you didn't know about this? Like where I come from in Kerala,
How is that legal? That can't be legal.
Oh, you don't know about P.C. Thomas and I don't know, Brilliance or Brilliant?
Sounds like a cult to me.
Oh, I'll tell you what happened there, because I went there for a bridge course after my 10th grade because my parents somehow thought that was a good idea. After your 10th,
what's a bridge course?
So basically, after your 10th grade, when all other kids go abroad or go on holiday, I was sent to this place where you are taught everything new that is going to happen to you in your 11th and 12th grade, because somehow, this is how they market it. They say that something big is going to happen when you go into your 11th grade because everything's going to be different and you have to be prepared in advance. So kids, no need to enjoy, just come and, start this bridge course with us, which is a 2-month residential thing. And you live in dormitories and you don't have access to the mobile phone or anything. If you want to contact your parents, you need to get a card and you can only call them once a week and they can't visit that often. You have to study all the time.
You're just throwing bomb after truth bomb. Hold on. Sticky.
Yep.
So you are in this institute and you can only speak to your parents once a week.
Yep.
And how many hours in the day are you studying or are you being taught things, or like, how does it work?
Okay, so my routine was like this. I woke up by 6 a.m. and by 7 a.m. I had to appear for breakfast. At 8 a.m. classes started, 12:30 p.m. No, 12:30 p.m. Lunch was served. 2 p.m. the next set of classes started. And by 4 p.m. I think we were done. Then we had a short break where they served us tea. And after tea, from 5 to 5:30 is break time for the girls, and 5:30 to 6 p.m. is break time for the boys. By the way, boys and girls don't interact. They don't sit in the same class or anything. Separate classes for girls, separate classes for boys, because being close to the opposite sex is going to distract you from your studies. I'm not done yet.
I'm sure you probably catch chlamydia or something if you're close to a boy, right? Or
yeah,
STD.
Of course. STD, it's not sexually transmitted anymore.
By the way, you can't actually get that through contact. It was a joke, just in case.
Oh, wow. Oh, we have to explain this because yeah, and after that was done, you're allowed, I think, an hour to go shower. And you know what the girls in my hostel did, myself included, because we hadn't seen boys in so long. um, from 5:30 to 6 when the boys would play, there was this row of bathrooms which faced the playground where you could go play badminton or something. So all of us would just climb on top of the toilets and everything just to see the guys so that we know that, oh, these creatures, they exist. Oh wow, that
Wow.
boy is good looking, etc. And whenever we played, we would see that from the boys' dormitories, all of them would come to the windows to start cleaning them or something.
Ankita, this is crazy because you see, okay, so you're obviously to some extent your parents were quite desperate. And most parents are desperate to make sure that the kids are prepared for anything and the kids excel in everything that they're entering into. So you were entering into your 11th grade, I'm assuming 10th,
Yeah.
11th grade. So they were like, Ankita has to be the best. This school will really help her. And the thing is, Ankita, us Asians are so good at business and marketing. We're so good at convincing people that these guys will tell you that we will actually turn Ankita into a genius if she comes into our school. And
no, the thing is, what happened was one of my cousins she was in her 12th, and I think it was a break after her 12th board exams, and she was going to appear for an entrance exam. So her parents, sent her there because all of the other parents decided to send their kids together. And basically, all of these friends got together and they sent their kids to this place. And it's through this cousin and her parents that my mom found out about this. And my mom decided, oh, my daughter needs this right now in her life, because otherwise how will she pass her 11th and 12th grade? And but thankfully, I had a cousin sister there who was my saving grace, because she was there before me. She knew what was happening, so she helped me settle in, and she would take care of me, and she was really my saving grace over there. But when she did it, she was all alone.
wow.
And there are these strict wardens, and I think compulsorily you have to sit and study till 10 p.m. or 9 p.m. I don't remember. And after that, if you want to go to bed, you can, so that you can wake up in the morning and study again. Yeah, and
So,
I think
Ankita,
the Christians had to compulsorily go to church as well.
Oh, wow. Ankita, when you were doing this in 10th grade, I used to wake up and I used to play sports in the morning. And then at like around midday, 1 p.m., I just spend the rest of my day in the beach or by the swimming pool with my friends. And I actually had a life and communicated with society. And that's the thing, Ankita. You know that in India, the system so rigorous, is so military. And you think, yes, I'm not saying that people don't come out of India intelligent. Of course they do. We have a lot of people who actually go into other countries and actually make things better, and that's something that we're all really proud of, and it's great. But the thing is, Ankita, in Europe, in Finland, for example, I don't know if you read, but in Finland, the schooling system is completely different.
No, I don't know about that.
They have less time to actually physically study. They have more breaks, and it's not as rigorous and intense, but they actually concentrate on the child's well-being. The mental well-being and how they communicate, how they work in society, and how they can play and have fun. And that's actually what's important these days, because in India, whatever's happening right now, everybody just wants to get 100%. And I know that in India, you can get 99.9999% and you still won't get into a college.
Yep.
It's so tough, and it's so much pressure on the child.
Yeah.
So much pressure on the student.
That's why I told you, when I hear that you took a break here just so that you could, follow your heart and go help out a developing country, live in a small village and help these people. That is so unheard of. The only break that I have heard of is people taking a break so that they can prepare for their medical entrance exams and going to these coaching classes.
And Ankita, when I told my family in India, I told them I'm going to Mozambique, and they were like, oh, we're going to Africa. And I was just like, yeah, so. And the thing is, like, a lot of Indian people in India, like, they're quite, I would say they're subtly racist to black people. Yeah.
Yes.
And
to black people, oh, come on, Meenal, they're racist amongst each other.
Yes.
Like in my state, the Malayalis look down upon the Biharis who come and help with the construction work. And if you go to Delhi, everyone refers to Malayalis and, Hyderabadis and everyone as Madrasis. That is racism right there.
So you can imagine what they were like when I told them I was going to Mozambique. And it was really tough because they didn't understand what I wanted to do. And I wanted to really share like everything I was going to do with them, but they didn't really get it. But so Ankita, when I was in Gibraltar and I told people that I was doing this, people sounded really excited. Like, oh, what are you going to do? And even when I came back, people were asking me, like, what did you do there? Like, how was it? And people were excited to hear my stories. But when I went to India and I told my cousins that, I did this, and I was so excited to tell them, but it didn't receive a good reception, because they were just like, oh, okay. Because they don't have that capacity to understand that, because they're not exposed to that sort of environment where they know you can
Or
do
because
this
you went to Africa and not to Australia, or I
or a
don't know, to
fancy
the
place.
US or
Yeah,
something. Yeah.
that is very true, Ankit. And
Also, Meenal, you mentioned that while you were taking this gap year and figuring things out for yourself, some of your friends would take up internships, and they would, instead of joining school, they would go get medical practice and do other internships, whether they get paid or not.
I'm still at the same level as them. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, they did that extra year. I'm still in fifth year. They're in fifth year. I passed the same
Oh,
exam as they did, but
yeah.
I actually enjoyed my gap year. You see what I mean? And people don't
Yeah.
get that. People think that people are so scared of the word going into medical school.
The thing is, I'm surprised that you can actually take a year off to do an internship like that and it's okay.
Yeah, it's quite common in Europe, Ankita. It's very common. And the thing is, I mean, in India, if I know that in India as well, it's very difficult to get into medical school. And I know it's because of entrance exams and all of that. And it's the same in the UK, same in Europe. A lot of us, I mean, a lot of people in my university, in my faculty, they've taken gap years, but they thought that getting more experience or getting more exposure in the hospital would be useful.
Right.
But ultimately, I can't speak for them, because it's not in my place to speak for them. But I know that if I was in that position, I would have hated it. I would have been bored out of my mind, because, Ankita, at the age of 18, you can't do much in a hospital. You can't go into surgery. Maybe in India you can, because in India they don't care so much. But in Europe, you can't go into surgery. You can't administer anything, and you're just walking around following doctors who don't give a shit about you, because you're still 18. You're not even in medical school.
Yeah.
That's the thing. You're not even in medical school. So what can a doctor do for you?
No, but I think it also has to do with the mentality. Why I'm so surprised, Meenal, I feel like an idiot asking you this question again and again. You took a gap year. Other people took a gap year to do an internship. The thing is, I think another thing with our mentalities back in India is that if you get a double promotion, like when my dad was young, I think he got a double promotion and he could skip a certain class and sit with his seniors. Basically, he passed out of school, high school, at the age of 16.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's considered to be a big accomplishment. And at the same time, if someone takes a year off and decides to not study or does anything but study, it's like this kid is a failure. It's like failing,
Yeah, and
you didn't get passed on to fifth grade after fourth grade, so you failed.
Well, Ankita, when I have an older brother, and my brother went through it the textbook way. He did his A levels, he went to university, didn't take a gap year, went to his masters, went straight to a job. He did it nice. He did it the perfect way, nice and easy. But when it came to me, I didn't want to do it that way. And my parents, because the reality was that I kind of failed. I failed to get into medical school, and that's the truth. Right. And I'll say it openly. I don't care. Like, I didn't get into medical school. I took a gap year. But my parents were a bit like, ooh, it sounds like, like, what do we tell people?
Yeah, exactly.
So they were like,
parents here also think, what do we tell people? You're not studying, but you're going somewhere to like Africa?
Yes. So when my parents were asked, so when I was walking around anywhere with my parents and they said, oh, Meenal, what are you doing this year? And I said, yeah, I'm going to Mozambique. I was really super excited about it. Like, I was like, yeah, I'm going to Mozambique. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And my dad, my mom, or, they wouldn't openly say she didn't get into medical school. They will say, actually, Meenal wanted to take a gap year because she wanted some time off of studies. And I was like, it's obviously bullshit, because that wasn't the case. I didn't want to take time off studies because I actually wanted to get into medical school the first time around. That is what I wanted, but it didn't happen. So I went to plan B. And even in India, when I told people taking a gap year, they obviously knew that, she's probably failed, so she hasn't gone to the next year. So you're right, Ankita, that is very true, because in India, it's not just about what the child wants or what the student wants. It's also about what are the parents going to tell their family? What are they going to tell their relatives? How are they going to show their face in society? But it's not like that in Europe at all. It's very common, very common. People do it all the time. People who even get into medical school sometimes actually reject their offer and say, actually, I want to take a gap year. So you can see how completely different it is. And I'm sure that's going to happen in India at one point.
Hopefully, right?
Maybe in like 100 years. God knows. Oh. But it'll happen at one point. But Ankita, I went to Mozambique. I took a gap year. I'm doing medicine. What got you into literature? Because I'm sure your parents wanted you to be an engineer or a doctor as well.
I think that was a plan, but somewhere along the way, they realized that they have a child and not a dog, so so they had to give in.
Sorry for everyone who's listening. We're laughing because dogs always come up in a conversation.
Yeah, dogs always come up in a conversation with me. I'm sorry about that. But the thing is, when I was in ninth grade, I realized that I didn't have any interest in any of the subjects we were doing in class except for English, right? English is the only subject that I would go back. That ninth grade is the time when they started Shakespeare, and I did ICSE in India. And in the ICSE syllabus, they teach you your Shakespeare properly. So I don't know about other schools, but in my school, they did a really good job, teaching us our Shakespeare. They took it line by line. They dissected it. They gave us, whatever material we needed. We were allowed to read up. It was amazing. I loved it. So I would go back home and I would read that and I would study that. But I had no interest in science and math and all of the other stuff. So by ninth grade, I kind of knew that this is what I wanted. But I was one of those clueless kids who had no idea, right? People would ask me, what do you want to do? And I went through a phase when I told people that I wanted to do biotechnology. And I didn't even know what biotechnology, like what the hell is biotechnology? If someone asked me, why do you want to do biotechnology? I would have honestly said, because it sounds cool. There's no other. I went through a phase where I wanted to become a fashion designer, a phase when I wanted to become, I don't know, all kinds of things. And then by the time I was in 12th grade, so in our 10, once we passed out, our school only provided two options. If you wanted to stay in the same school and the same syllabus, you could either do computer science or biology.
So you only had those two options?
Basically, just one option. It was just science.
Yeah.
Right? No arts, no humanities, no commerce. Just science. And and within science, you can either go in for engineering, which is computer science, or you can go into medicine if you pick up biology. Yeah. And I was too lazy. So I'm not much of a talker, or I'm not someone who wants to make new friends at that age. And, at the age of 15, I thought, I'm already 15, so old. I don't want to go and make new friends now.
So wow, you were a wise 15-year-old, Ankita.
I was so wise. And that was the only driving force to remain in that school, so that I don't have to interact with more friends or anything. So I picked up easier of the two. Biology means more work, so let's just do computer science. I can just write a few programs here or there and I'll pass. That was my logic. And I took up computer science and I failed it. I mean, I was so bad at it.
Yeah.
I didn't understand it.
You didn't have any interest in it, so...
I had no interest. I had zero interest in it. And my husband, Shane, was my classmate back then. I still remember when we were doing our practicals or something. It was our final practical exam. And he was going from bench to bench, writing down code for people who were struggling because he wanted to help them pass somehow. And he came and wrote my answer for me. And there was this last line left, right? Last line of code that everyone knows. I don't know, something like system.out.println or something. And he was like, would you be able to manage that? And I said, no. And I stood there like, dude, I'm doing you such a favor by letting you write my code. And he wrote that last thing for me as well. And that is how I passed my fucking practical exam.
So Shane saved you even at the age of 15. Wow, that's amazing. Yeah.
That's how I passed my final 12th standard exams. And by then, I knew that, God, I am not going in for engineering or medicine because I would make... medicine was out of the question because I took up patients. I would kill patients, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, I would just get frustrated with them. And I'd be like, die,
them with the needles.
Yeah. But I knew I would be a failure as an engineer. I would suck. So I decided to do literature because I knew I loved reading books. I loved my literature even when I was studying. So I'm going to do literature. And my mom, because everyone else was doing all this engineering bullshit, she went and got the engineering entrance exam application form and everything. And she was like, if you don't fill this out, I'm going to fill it out and I'm going to send it in. And I think she did. She did.
Really?
She did. Yeah, but I didn't appear for the test or anything.
I know that in my family, when my parents said that my friend is doing, like one of my friends was doing criminal law, and they were like, what's she going to do with that? Like, that's
what?
It. Yeah. I'm just like, okay, you have no idea what happens in this world. Criminal law.
I'll tell you what she's going to do with that. She's going to make money is what she's going to do with that.
Yeah, a hell of a lot of money. Yeah. And, they said they heard my friends, some of my friends were going into politics and some of my friends were going into history. And my parents kept, looking down on them saying, what's she going to do with that? She's going to come out. What kind of job is she going to get? And obviously, there's so many things that you can do with these degrees. And I'm sure that if I told my parents I'm going to do English literature, they would probably take me to like the temple for like a few days to get like they will think like a witch has cursed me. I don't know what resistance you faced.
It was not my parents, because initially after my mom went through that peer pressure phase where all of her friends were getting their kids into engineering colleges and she wanted to get her kid into an engineering college.
Mm-hmm.
I call that my mom's peer pressure phase. So after that was done, I told her that this was not happening. I'm not going to do this to myself. My dad, surprisingly, was always very supportive, because I think he was one of those people who followed his dreams and did exactly what he wanted to do with his life.
You did mention that your dad was in the Navy, right?
In the Air Force.
In the Air Force, sorry. Yeah. So he was in the Air Force. So he's probably seen a lot more than, or been exposed to a lot more than what your mom has.
Yeah, and another thing is his dad owned a business, and it was a thriving business. And my dad and his brother were the only two sons in the family, so they could easily, take the business forward. And I think the plan was for them to handle the business together. But my dad decided at a very young age that he wanted to become a pilot. He wanted to fly planes, and he wanted to be a fighter pilot and serve the country and all of those things. So if you look at it, back in the day, he was a little bit of a rebel for following his dreams, and everyone would have just assumed that because he's the son of a businessman, he's going to be well off all his life, and he wouldn't have to work a day because he has his dad's business, etc. But my dad was like, no, I want to fly planes, and he followed that dream and he made it come true. So when I explained to him that I would be a really shit engineer and I don't want to do this, he was fine with it. He was like, whatever you want to do, your life, you make your own choices. It's the same with the marriage thing as well. He was like, yeah, you find someone for yourself. But my mom was the one who was affected at first, and then she also realized that she's just going to let me do what I want to do. But the resistance that I faced was from other family members and from other people that I met on the train. You
on the train? Who did you meet on the train?
There was this guy. There was this dude who was sitting on the train with me, and I was studying in Cochin, and my parents were living in Trivandrum. So once in a while, if I got a long weekend or something, I would travel back to Trivandrum. And this guy was also traveling to Trivandrum, and he was like, "What do you do? My daughter's your age." And I was in second year of literature, I think, and I said, "I do literature." And he was like, "Why did you decide to do literature in another city? Like, why didn't you do it where your parents are?" So I said, because I was looking at college ratings, and this college that I'm studying in has better ratings than most of the colleges in Trivandrum. So, I wanted to go and study there. And this guy was like, why do you even have to look at ratings for doing literature? I mean, it's just literature. And
oh my gosh.
Guess what his daughter, who was my age, was doing at the time?
Medicine?
She was repeating her second year for her medical entrance exam. Like, she had passed out of her 12th grade and she was not in college, and she was repeating for the second time so that she would finally get into medical school. And I was like, of course she is, you asshole, because, I didn't say that to him.
Obviously not.
I was thinking, of course, that poor kid is in some residential institution, repeating to get into a medical school because A, you will not pay for her college education that you want her to get. You want her to be a doctor. You have no respect for anything else. I just, I lost it with that guy, and I stopped talking to him after that, and I pretended as if he was not sitting next to me.
Yeah.
But then there were others who told me things like, oh, you'll have no future if you do this, if you do literature. It's because you have no ambition. And one of my teachers back in school, when I went, so there's this ritual that some of the kids back in India have. Basically, after they're done with school and they get placed into certain colleges, they go back to school and they tell their teachers where they're going to study, because look, we're going to be so successful when we pass out of that school, that college, etc. So my friends were going, and they forced me to go with them and tell the teachers goodbye. I went there. I told them I was doing this. I was going to do literature, and I was going to do it in this college. And this teacher, this science teacher, looked at me and said,
I hate him already.
No, it is a woman.
Oh, I hate her already.
She was like, you picked it up just because you're lazy, didn't you? You picked it up because you have no other aim in life, didn't you? And I was standing there.
Actually, the thing is, Ankita, if you picked medicine or you picked engineering, that would have been because you have no other aim in life. And that would have been because you're too late. It's true. You pick this because you have an aim in life and you aren't lazy. You want to do something that you love.
No, but honestly, I didn't have. Honestly speaking, I didn't know what I wanted to do in life or anything. I was just,
But you knew.
but
The thing is,
still,
Ankita, you don't know at that age. Nobody does.
yeah, I was just someone who knew what I didn't want to do. I didn't necessarily know what I wanted to do.
But that's how you have to make decisions at such a young age. Eliminate. It's a process of elimination at that age.
Yeah. And someone told me that this was after I got into college, and I was like halfway through college. Someone mentioned to me, BCom graduates are getting only 8,000 rupee salaries. What kind of a salary will you get with your literature degree? And you don't want to do anything with your life, do you? It's because you have no ambition in life. What are you planning to do after this? I mean, what job can you land? And the other person was like, oh, she can become a teacher. Who wants to become a teacher? and stuff like that. And someone even offered me a job as a receptionist in somebody's office, because they were like, oh, you poor thing, you won't get a job anywhere, do you want to be a receptionist at my office? And I was like, no, thank you.
That's terrible, Ankita.
Yep.
I'm sorry you had to go through all of that. I mean,
and the thing is, Meenal, I was like 17, 18 years old. And at that age, you can't look at a grown adult and say, I will make it big in life. You just wait and see, when I don't have a plan.
Not at all, Ankita. And I think at that age, it's not just that we can't tell people what we want, but at that age, we're so influenced by other people. We're so naive. We're so numb. We're just fresh out of school and we're entering a new stage in our lives. And if someone tells us that literature is not going to get you anywhere in life, you will actually start thinking like, oh crap, maybe I shouldn't do literature.
No, whenever they told me this, thankfully, I kept thinking that I have to show them that I will get somewhere in life. Thankfully.
Yeah, I mean, you're obviously very strong-minded to say that, but a lot of people at a young age will be influenced by these people. And at the age of 18, Ankita, nobody knows what they're going to do with their life. I'm 23 and I still don't know. I mean, people ask me now, what kind of doctor do you want to be? What do you want to specialize into? I'm like, I don't even know what I'm going to have for breakfast tomorrow. I mean, I don't know what I'm going to do in 2 years. Nobody does.
Exactly.
It's so unpredictable. I mean, so many things have changed in my life and in the way I think about things in the past 3 years. I don't know what it's going to even be like in the next 2 years.
No, I mean, especially when your own relatives and people you've known all your life growing up, they're saying things like, oh, you'll only get lesser salary than 8,000 a month and you won't be able to survive. And what are you going to do? Are you going to become a teacher? When they say things like that, if that's before I took up the degree, I can still understand, because they can get away with the, oh, we care for her and we want her to do well in life thing. But if they say that once I'm halfway through my degree, just to, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know what that is. It's not beneficial. It's why would you say that?
They're bored. They're very bored.
I don't know. It just hurts, a 17, 18-year-old kid, this is not what that kid should listen to. This is not what a kid
at that age, Ankita, you should be encouraged. You should be excited to go into something new, something that you love so much, something that you're so passionate about. I was quite lucky because I had some pretty good mentors around me, who kept me sane. And as I mentioned, my table tennis coach, Lizanne, she gave me a lot of good advice. And yes, to some extent, Ankita, we don't know what's best for us. And we haven't experienced the life that our parents have. And yeah, sometimes they might know what's best for us. But if it means that you're not happy and you're doing something that you don't have a passion for, then what are you doing? Like, this is what life is about. Life is about being happy, doing things you're passionate about. If not, you're just rotting away.
The only thing, when I look back at my life, one of the things that I'm really happy about is that I always followed my heart and only did the things that made me happy. Like, I was never miserable studying a subject. I was never thinking to myself that, oh, what am I doing in this college, doing this course? I was happy. I was genuinely happy doing what I was doing. And I actually did quite well, There, in a class of like 50, 60 students, I would be in the first 5 most of the time. And I was happy with that. That was good enough for me. I would get an aggregate A grade, and I was happy with that, because it's not because I studied every single day. I would only start studying 2 or 3 days before the exam, but I loved the subject. So it didn't feel like I was putting in a lot of effort. I didn't have to, because I really loved it.
And Ankita, I was like that at the beginning, where I was really enthusiastic. I was as I said, the Duracell bunny running around. And I I've lost a lot of that now, to be honest. I mean, maybe it's because I'm entering that phase where I'm almost done. And it's a long time. I mean, I've been studying for 4 years now. I still have another 2 left. And it just feels like I'm not seeing that light at the end of the tunnel. And I know that the thing is, I can see the difference that when I had such a big passion for it at the beginning. And now it's not that I don't have a passion for medicine. It's not that I don't want to do it. Of course, I want to do it. I want to pursue it. I want to finish it. But because I have been exposed to so much more than just medicine, and being exposed to the fact that, there's so much more you can do in your life than just sit down and study like a robot to get your degree and get a job, that obviously there's only so much passion that you can have. And now that passion has been distributed into so many different hobbies and so many different things that I want to do with my life. And I know what it's like to sit down and study and be really passionate about it. But I also know what it's like to sit down and study and actually just be like, oh, just have to get through this somehow. And you staying up late and you're trying to get through the syllabus. So I know what it's like to be on both of those ends.
So, Meenal, I wanted to ask you, while you were set on this career path and you knew that you wanted to become a doctor when you grew up, were you aware of all the other opportunities that were available outside, like all the other career choices available for you?
I didn't, Ankita. I was aware of, for example, that you could do engineering, you could do law, you could do so many things. The thing was, Ankita, it's a very difficult question to answer, because you can only be aware of opportunities if you have certain ideas. And I was quite close-minded at that age. I didn't, I didn't even take this first step into thinking about other opportunities, because I didn't know there was other opportunities available. I thought, because everyone around me just did the textbook stuff, degree, finish, get a job. So I wasn't aware of the opportunities then, but definitely now, when I'm into my 5th year of medical school, I am definitely like, every door that was closed when I was 18 has opened, and I know that there's much, much more available. But I can't blame that on anybody. I can blame myself, really, for not asking enough questions or for not doing enough research. And I think at that age, nobody really is exposed unless you have parents who tell you about everything, unless you have teachers who tell you about everything, unless you have access. Now we have so much access to the internet. That you can do so many things apart from just get a degree. I mean, so many people are successful in their lives without even getting a degree. So I wasn't aware of that then, Ankita. I'm only aware of it now, coming into medical school.
Same here. Like I had no idea that there were all of these other courses that you could do. I knew that, if you wanted, you could do an interior design course, or you could do a fashion designing course in NIFT in Delhi, or you could do a journalism in Chennai. And I knew all of this, but it was just not very tangible. It was just there.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Like, it makes sense, because you know it's there, but you can't perceive that you will actually do it.
Yeah, you can't really think that you would actually get through all of those barriers. There are just so many barriers in front of you if you want to do all of those things like entrance exams and whatnot. And you just never think that you would be able to do it. But speaking more widely, what I do for a living right now is something I wouldn't have ever dreamt of. Like, if I go back to my 17-year-old self and say, hey kid, don't worry, you're going to start making money by sitting at home and writing a fucking blog, I would have been like, oh, shut up. Yeah. Because I had no idea that. And the sad thing is that monetizing a blog, monetizing your content online was already a big thing back in 2007, 2008. People were already doing it back in the US and the UK and the West. And back in India, no one really knew about it. And we were not being told any success stories. We were not being told about that one person who didn't have a degree but started a beauty salon.
We hear about, even now, I hear about these success stories. And I tell my mom, I think one day I was telling my mom about the guy who opened Subway. And he started very simple. He's like, I'll open a sandwich shop. I'll allow people to choose the ingredients and the toppings.
Yeah.
And he started from scratch. And now look, obviously you don't need to mention how big he is. And I told my mom, and she was like, yeah, but I'm sure he had some extra money. I'm sure his parents helped him. I'm like, no, he did it all by himself. And my parents don't get that. They can't understand that you can actually do that in this generation, in this day and age. If you work hard enough, you can start from scratch and actually be that rich.
So that was it. But the thing is, Meenal, in my final year, when I was doing my master's, the final year of my master's, I was sitting in one of those classes where this teacher would just walk into class with a book, and she would sit there and she would read from the book, and that was her taking class. Okay,
just reading from a book.
Yeah, she would just walk in, she would sit on her chair, she wouldn't even stand up, she would sit and she would read. And sometimes if she's feeling bored, she would ask us to read. That was That was the class. And I remember how mostly we had a lot of reading to do because obviously this is literature. So we had like 26 novels in one semester and stuff like that. So while most of of my classmates didn't read all of the books, my friend and I, my friend that you met in London,
Oh, yeah.
her and I, we kind of promised each other that we are going to try and finish as many books as possible. We want to read the originals as much as possible. And whenever this teacher would come into class and she'd start reading, we'd read our books, our novels, and that's how I managed to finish all of those novels because I wasn't listening to her read because I could read, right? I could go back home and read. I didn't have to listen to her. So it was her class. I really wanted to bunk that class because I was bored out of my skull. And I hear that this company has come for recruitment and they want English literature students to appear. So I obviously went for the recruitment and they selected based on the first preliminary written test, they selected 2 kids from my class to go to the next stage of interviews. And I was one of those 2 kids. And that was a huge surprise to me. And this just because this interview was going to take place in my hometown of Trivandrum. And because the college agreed to give me free attendance for traveling, I actually traveled home. I stayed with my parents and I got to witness my dog's funeral because my dog died and it was a sad time. And then, I was crying. I went to this interview. I was crying there. I was sitting, after each round of interviews, I would come out and I would stare at my hands and cry. Yeah, all that happened. And finally, I landed a job. And this job was that of a business skills trainer. And what the job basically entailed was to train new engineers into the company, new recruits into the company in language and communication skills. And it was a managerial job, right? And
so
nobody
you studied English literature and you went into managing.
Yeah, I did English literature and I went into basically teaching. But it's a managerial position and it's in a corporate company, something that all these engineers aspire to get into. And I was training these engineers in English and nobody ever told me that I could do that. Nobody ever told me that this kind of a job existed. I was like, what? This is a job? And turns out that this is a job in not only the company that I got recruited into, but in many companies. Then how come kids are not being told that this job exists and it's a good job? Trust me, take my word for it. It's a good job and it's a fun job. I enjoy it. And it pays, pretty much the same. I think it pays a little more than what the engineers get paid. I'm not really sure.
That would make sense because you're teaching the engineers, right? So
yeah, I guess yeah. So that's how it was, and nobody ever told me, which is this whole thing about awareness that we were talking about. I was not aware that this job existed. Otherwise, those people who told me that, oh, what is she going to become after she passes out? I could have told them, I'm going to become a business skills trainer.
But the thing is, Ankita, even now, everyone just assumes that I'm going to be a doctor, which is fair enough. Obviously, it's the most obvious option I can take, but I know that there's so many more options available for me. I don't have to walk around with my stethoscope around a hospital. I don't have to do that. There's so many other things I can do with my degree. Now, we are only exposed to the degree and the name we're going to get. Nobody tells us what we can do with that in the future. There's so many things available, so many options available. You just need the right people around you at that age. And at that age, if you're really concerned about your future, which you should be, if you're really concerned about pursuing your dreams and your happiness, find someone to help you.
Find someone really positive and encouraging to help you, not someone who's constantly trying to put you down and say, oh, what are you going to do? You're not going to get a good salary.
Yeah, I mean, if you're lucky enough to have parents who can expose you to new things and new ideas, and that's fantastic. That's great. If you don't have that, I know that some colleges in India have some counselors because they want to figure out what kind of job they want to do, if they want to go abroad. So people should go to the counselors. I didn't have that, but I had some good people around me to help me decide what I wanted to do, and some people who encouraged me to go to Mozambique.
Yeah.
You just have to find them. You just have to look out for them. So, Ankita, we've covered a good chunk of our first part. I mean, there's obviously a lot more to talk about, but I think we should conclude it here and round it up because the other things you want to talk about will probably take us another hour, another 2 hours. So we should leave it.
I mean, this was just our stories, right? This was just your story of getting into medical college and my story of not my struggle, but just, I picked literature.
Struggles. Come on, man. I'm talking about Mozambique and like a tin roof over my head. I have a moth in my room and you're talking about struggles. Come on.
I mean, this is this was just our stories. It was about your struggles and how you got into medical school. Finally, after all those
Well,
entrance
Ankita,
exams and
I can't say struggles. I went to Mozambique and I was talking about tin roof over my head. Please, come on.
Well, compared to that, nothing is a struggle.
Everything is relative. Everything is relative. So
yeah, and it was just my story of well, nothing. I didn't do what other people did, and picked up literature because I was lazy and because I didn't have any ambition or aim in life, and because I'm stupid and I suck.
So, guys, anybody who's flunking in school, you don't worry, man. Ankita is living proof that it can be okay.
Or can the kid be okay?
So we'll round off our episode over that. You can find us on social media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at The Desi Outsiders. You can find us online at www.desioutsiders.com, where you'll also find our forum. And each episode has its own discussion, so feel free to open up whatever discussion you want and join in the fun. And leave any questions you have. You can also mail us with any questions you have, any ideas you have. I mean, even if you don't agree with us, let us know. We'll happily discuss anything that you want to talk about, and mail us at mail@desioutsiders.com, where Ankita and I will try our best to help you guys out. If you don't want us to mention any of your ideas on the podcast, please let us know and we'll make sure we don't do any of that.
The part that I really look forward to are the stories that our listeners send in. That's the part that I love the most.
Yeah, do send us your stories. We've already had so many great stories from so many people. So on that note, I'm Meenal.
And I'm Ankita.
And we are the Desi Outsiders.